fundamentally, greenwashing is usually about a company trying to sell a product or a service, and that is just encouraging consumption. And one of the biggest issues with the ecological crisis we face is overconsumption. We need to consume less, we need to be more mindful about how we use resources, and just a company just getting us to buy something because it's, even if it's slightly better, doesn't necessarily address that issue.
I think that's something that's so frustrating about greenwashing, is it is a little bit of a divide and rule thing, because you have this sort of community that really wants to, everybody wants the world to not be, you know, like within the zero waste community or you know, wider community, we don't want to do things that harm the environment. But then you have sort of companies come in who are wanting to make a profit off of that sentiment, and they peddle these products that aren't great, and the people who don't have a lot of time, who just want to do the right thing, who fall for that, can get really upset when they find out that it's not as good as they thought, and they can shoot the messenger rather than getting frustrated at the company. And that's really, that is, so I don't get grumpy at people who get grumpy at us for saying, well, maybe it's not as good. I just get frustrated at this whole greenwashing thing, taking advantage of people and just wasting our energy and resources, like fighting amongst ourselves. It's so boring.
So a lot of packaging is, you know, people often, it's probably more well known with conventional fossil fuel based plastics that, but even then it's not that well known. But, you know, it's not just one material, you know, and often people will think about that with bioplastics that say, oh, it's made from cornstarch. Okay, that's the base monomer, as it's called, the base material. But they have to put all these chemical additives into it for different functions. So to make it rigid, or to make it flexible, to make it clear, or, you know, or if it's a paper packaging, you know, it has to be lined with something for it to be grease proof or water resistant or whatever. You know, also all of these functions that we need from packaging are achieved by adding different chemicals in them. And, you know, there is increasing amount of research around the impact of those chemicals on human health or the health of all sorts of organisms, and it's really quite scary, you know, the kinds of things that people are finding out. Some studies suggest that you know, that the chemicals that are used in plastics are really threatening the future fertility of humanity. You know, they're looking at sperm counts reaching a median of 0 in just 25 years. So half of all men won't be able to reproduce, you know, and it's not just that, it's all, you know, potential causing of cancers and other, you know, sort of longer term health issues, and that's just that's just the impact of packaging on human health.
Another example of greenwashing too is like the misuse of scientific measurements to sort of, you know, like selectively cherry picking things. A good example of that is the plastics industries using this thing called life cycle assessments. So life cycle assessment is a credible scientific methodology for measuring the impact of a product across its life cycle, particularly carbon emissions and so on. But the plastics industry have been using it to say that, you know, you put plastics packaging through a life cycle assessment and it's the greatest material you never would have dreamed, it's so good. And of course, if you just ignore certain parts of the life cycle, like what happens after it gets thrown away, or if you don't measure like the impact of pollution or any of that kind of stuff, or you don't measure like the impact of fracking or whatever. So yeah, like there's lots of packaging companies that take advantage of life cycle assessment too, and have this whole conversation about, oh, like either you care about zero waste or you care about climate change, but you can't care about the same. You know, they actually pit environmental issues against each other, and you know, like people who care about climate fighting with people who care about waste, when it's all about how we use the planet's resources.
Often, you know, these chemicals are in products that are claimed to be great for the environment, the best choice that you could make. You know, pick this bioplastic over a conventional plastic thing. Whereas we don't know what really is in a lot of these products, and in some ways they could be as dangerous as the conventional one. But we think it's better, and so because of the greenwashing, so we go for that one. So rather than actually like dealing with the issue of all those chemical additives and the impact it's having on us,
that a lot of the greenwash solutions tend to be innovations or new ways of doing things with materials that are quite new, like plastics, in the context of geological time and human history. It's really new. We just don't know what we're doing as a species with plastics. As we've been doing all these innovations, and now we're doing green innovations, and we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, and we often only realise 10, 15 years down the track the mess we've made. And I always use the example of like back in the 90s, people thought it was an excellent idea that we were going to deal with the problem of plastic bottle waste by turning plastic bottles into textiles like polar fleece. 15 years down the track, 20 years down the track, I've gone with 30 now, we realise there's all these plastic microfibres in the ocean, in the waterways, in the soil that we can never, ever get out. So now you sort of see the same thing happening with compostable packaging. It's like, what are we putting in the soil that in 15 years down the track, we may not be able to get out? And the thing that just hurts the most is that we're doing it because we think that it's better. And that's where the greenwashing comes in.